an analogy that they can see themselves, oh, that works for me, then I think I can have a better impact. So really, if I go back to my primary objectives for this, is to connect and build rapport. That's the first thing. Without that, you've all heard the phrase, they don't care how much you know until they... So the first part of this whole thing, I want to connect and connect and connect the whole way through, but that's really critical because without that, I can't move on. Adding value, being of service. One of the things that Whitney and I do, because sometimes it's nerve-wracking, even though I've been presenting since I was in my early 20s, and I've done, I don't know, I'd have to, if I ever tried to calculate, I did once, a couple years ago, I calculated how many people I think I may have spoken to in my 25 years, and it's over about 2 million people. And small and medium-sized groups, but I still get nervous when I get in front of a group, sometimes. But I always calm myself with this, because my little mantra before I go is I say, please give me the strength, please give me the calm, please help me stay in my heart. And I hope that I can just say one thing that could touch one person and make a difference in their life. And then from there I just let go. I have fun. And I just hope that I can say one thing that makes a difference for somebody's life. But you know what? When I do feel the most nervous, do you think it's when I'm focusing on the audience or when I'm focusing on how good I'm doing? Or if I'm focusing on if I got enough information, or if I'm good enough, or if I forget anything. When I'm in my heart, how many of you found this? When you're in your heart, you can't say the wrong thing. And when your head, you can know everything perfect and say all the wrong things. So if there was one thing you take away from this, it would be this. It's like, have that be your primary outcome. Being of service, adding value, doing one thing to make a person's better life. Now the other thing we really want is probably the reason they're getting together with you is they want to hear about this offering. So that is one of the outcomes, is to explain our offering and give them the information they need to make an informed decision. Now I'm not attached to the decision. My responsibility is to share the information in a way that they can get it and feel it, and then let them make the decision. Does that make sense? How clean does that feel? Right? Isn't that what we all do at Take Shape for Life? We ask questions to find out if they're interested. If they're interested, we share our story, we explain the program. If they like what they hear, we offer our services to help them get healthy. If they like our offer, they accept and we partner to get healthy. That's how simple it is. And it's absolutely pure. There's no manipulation required. So one thing about meeting people where they are is there are different styles of learning, right? Have you heard about visual, auditory, and kinesthetic? Auditory people, if you hear it, oftentimes it's easy to forget. Now some people that are auditory, that's their #1 method. And they learn really well by just hearing it. Some people are visual. They need to see it. And the old phrase is if you see it, you can remember it. Now I'm going to qualify this. If you just see a bunch of text on a piece of paper, how many of you have a hard time with that? Right? But if you see, did anyone just come from Brad Miller's workshop? What was the first thing he did? He had the guy go up and try to shoot the thing, right?
Yeah.
And then the next thing is he took a handful and he walked over and what? So when you create an image, a visual image like that, an icon, something that people can remember, it sticks with them. So if they can see it, it's good for you to give them an icon. It helps them remember it. But when they do it, they experience it, that's when they get it. That's when they understand it. So we're going to do it today. At the end of this workshop, we're going to do some of the stuff I'm going to teach you right now. How's that? So what drives people? Emotion or logic? Yeah, there's been just dozens and dozens of psychological studies over the years. Emotion, the limbic system of the brain, drives people. Logic and reason. You just need enough just to rationalize it. You don't need a lot. But the thing about this is there's an important thing that I found, and it has to do with creating tension, structural tension. We've all heard of it, right? There's a way of creating tension in a presentation. And what is structural tension? When we talk about the tension is between 2 points. What's the first point that you need to create structural tension? Okay, that's down here. The current reality. That is the marker point. That's the GPS starting point. What's the other point you need? The vision of the future. Their future vision of what they want, right? So it's what they want, and what's that? That's the why. So this is the what, and this is the why. And do you need both?
Yeah.
Because this is what connects it to the what? Emotion. So what I'm trying to do in a workshop, and I used to teach a lot of presentation training for people, and they would say, gosh, Greg, I did the greatest workshop. I had so many people come up saying, wow, that was so interesting. You did such a great job. But nobody enrolled. Does that ever happen? Anyone? And I go, okay, let's talk about what did you cover? And what ends up happening a lot of times in that scenario is they talked about all the benefits, all the reasons why, all the good stuff. They tried to really sell their idea to the audience. But what they never did is they never created any tension. They never went down to the dark side. What's going to happen in your life if you don't change? So the emotional roller coaster, this is what creates tension. The difference between where you are and where you want to be. You all got that, right? So let me describe what I mean by emotional roller coaster. So if on a scale of 1 to 10, this was extremely ecstatic, passionate, excited, on fire, totally with you in this presentation, engaged, fully engaged, emotionally, this is level 10 on emotion. This is a minus 10 on emotion. It's the opposite. Fear, concern, despair, frustration, anxious, right? What you want to do with your flow of your workshop is, if you just do life is good, life is good, life is good, life is good, you're going to have a very weak impact. It's like shooting instead of using an arrow, you're shooting a Q-tip at somebody. But if you can take that journey and you can say, hey, this is what's possible, and this is what's current reality. But you know what? Here's what she did to be successful. But if you don't change, nothing's going to change. Here's what Dr. A says we could do. Here's what the rest of America's trying. Here's what happens when you become a health coach. Here's what happens if you stay where you are. How would you like to partner with us to create what you want? Does that make sense? So the emotional roller coaster takes a little bit of courage on your part, because no one likes to talk about the tough stuff, right? And the other thing is, sometimes it's difficult for presenters to kind of stick it to them. Like Dr. A doesn't have any problem. He's like, hey, look guys, if this is you, life isn't very good. He'll stick it to you. He doesn't mind taking you down here, but he will tell you up here. He'll leave you because this is where you want to go. You following me? So, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, how you create that emotional roller coaster. But does that make sense? Just the concept of the emotional roller coaster. Because emotion does drive behavior. And think about Oprah. Whenever she's doing one of her stories, does she start off with, life is good, everything's great, I'm going to share with you, we're going to give you a bunch of cars, woohoo! No. It starts off with, life was in the dumps, she was in the heck, she was ready to lose her house, her husband just left her, she da-da-da-da. But then there's success. And by the contrast between where she was and where she ended up, the bigger the contrast, the bigger the impact. Write that down. The bigger the contrast, the bigger the impact. So, how do you tell a story? This is the thing about telling stories that I think is very important. Now, there's different types of stories, but the one I'm going to talk about is what I love about Take Shape for Life. How many of you would agree that one of the coolest things about Take Shape for Life is how transparent, authentic, and real everyone is, right? Does it take courage to stand up in front of the room and admit you're human? Does it take courage for somebody like they did last night in the presidentials to admit, I filed bankruptcy? I never saw myself wanting to do it. Some of you, there was only a couple people in the Globe meeting. But I think it's important for us, if we ever want to have tension in our lives, is to be honest with ourselves. Would you agree? And if you want people to say me too when you're telling your story, instead of so what, use this strategy called attack and confess. Now, if you attack the audience and say, you guys suck, you guys should get up in the morning and brush yourself off and be a professional, they're going to resist that, right? Do me a favor.